Hey everybody, welcome back to thedrumshed.com. In today's lesson, we're going to be working on 16th note bass drum doubles. We're going to try them out in the context of a beat, and then we're going to take it a little bit farther and we're going to put them into the context of a fill. But before we do that, we're going to break down the mechanics of how to execute these faster doubles with one foot. We're not going to be using double pedals in this lesson. Until you have this mastered with one foot, it's really best to focus your energy there. And then once you want to move on to 3 or 4 note groupings, then we can maybe start to think about incorporating a double pedal. But in today's lesson, we're going to be focusing on the single pedal. So to start with, let's break down the mechanics of what it takes to play these 16th note doubles at a fast speed. When we're thinking of them in the context of a beat, we're going to be lining them up against the 8th note pattern from our hi-hat. So if we're playing 2 quick 16ths, we're going to fit 2 of them in the space of 1 8th note. So if we were counting 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and put the double right at the beginning of the bar, we would have 1E and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1E. It would look something like this. All right, so let's take a look at the mechanics of what it takes to play those faster doubles. If you look at my positioning on the foot plate, I'm not right up into the chain. Even though your footboard is really nicely shaped, kind of like your shoe, you don't want to be all the way up in the chain for this technique. You want to actually pull back maybe about halfway down the footboard. That's going to let the pedal work with you to get a little bit more speed. If you think of the footboard as a lever like this, if you're pushing up here, you have to travel this whole distance to get the beater to hit. But if you're back this way, you have about half the distance to travel. So in effect, it speeds up your pedal for free. So we're going to slide halfway down the footboard, and the way we're going to execute this double is we're actually going to play what's called a heel up technique. Now, the heel up technique is really simple, lifting your heel up off the footboard. And to do this, you're going to want to make sure your seat's at a proper height so that your leg is maybe just a little higher than parallel to the floor. But you want to be balanced. You don't want to be trying to do these doubles and feeling like you're going to tip over because you're used to leaning on your bass drum leg for support. So what I like to do is start with my heel all the way up and the beater just a little bit off the drum head. And the first note is actually going to be played with just my ankle. So that'll look something like this. I'm actually just flicking my ankle to get that beater to hit the head. And you can see I'm staying really loose and letting that spring pull the beater right back off the drum head. For the second note, I'm actually going to drop my foot all the way down to the pedal. So when you put them together, you have ankle, foot. Now, a great way to work on this is actually away from your bass drum pedal. This is something that you can practice sitting in any chair as long as it's at a reasonable height. So the way that you'd practice this away from your pedal would be to just put your foot off to the side of your pedal to start off with and start just hovering your whole foot up over the floor so that your leg is actually supporting your foot. And then play your first note by tapping, second note by putting your foot down. So it's very important that you keep your ankle relaxed while you're working on this technique. You don't want to have that first note lock up in your ankle and have the beater get stuck on the bass drum head. What happens to a lot of guys when they're working on this is they go for that second note and they just hit the pedal and it doesn't really do anything because they haven't let that beater come back off the head in order to get the second note. Now, the next challenge with this technique is to keep these notes even. Now, the best way to work on this is to start with your hands, because our hands are hopefully a lot more accurate than our foot. We're going to play 2 notes on our snare drum, followed by 2 notes on our bass drum, and we're going to try to keep the spacing identical when we move from our hands to our feet. This is a great foot warm-up when you sit down on your drums at the beginning of the day. This is something that I used to start off a lot of my practice sessions doing. So what it would look like is something like this. And then once you have it at a slower tempo, you can start to speed up. But again, make sure as you speed up that you keep the notes even. If it starts to get even, slow it back down. Again, metronome is a great way to work with this pattern and any other patterns that you're practicing. So I'm going to do a little bit of this from slow to fast. And to keep it interesting, you can also switch your sticking up. What I was doing there was a right, left, foot, foot. You could also go left, right, foot, foot, or you could put a double on each hand. Right, right, foot, foot, left, left, foot, foot. So I'm going to mix it up a little bit with my sticking as I do this slow to fast, just to show you a couple of the options. So that's a great exercise to do to help you start to speed up these doubles. Again, you saw as I started to speed those up that I never let my ankle lock up. I kept it really, really relaxed, and that's super important when you're working on this particular technique. So now that we've got the basic technique for these doubles down, let's start to put them in the context of a beat. Let's start right on the first beat like we were talking about. Let's put 1 E on our bass drum, and then we'll follow it with a fairly simple snare and bass pattern. Our snare, again, is always going to be on 2 and 4 in these exercises. And for this particular one, we're going to add 2 eighth notes on 3 and. So the whole pattern would be 1 E, 2, 3, and 4. Let's try that pattern at 80 beats per minute. And now a little bit faster, 100 beats per minute, 8 bars. So now let's take that double and move it over an eighth note. Instead of having the double start on beat 1, let's have it start on the and of 1. Now I'm still going to keep a bass drum on beat 1, but I'm going to follow it with that double on the and. So what we'll end up with is 1 and a 2, 3 and 4. 1 and a 2, 3 and 4. Or if it's easier to think of it this way, bass, 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 snare, bass, bass, snare. So let's do this again at 2 tempos. We'll do it at 80 to start off with, and then we'll speed it up to 100. So with all these examples, if the slower speed that I'm playing them in the lesson is a little bit fast for you still, by all means, take your metronome out and slow them down. Take them down to 60, 50, 40 beats per minute if you need to. When I was practicing these things when I was younger, I would work them at just an absolute crawling tempo to get those bass drums nice and even and falling exactly where I wanted them to be. Now, a really great check you can do when you're practicing is to record yourself. You're going to hear me say this a lot in these videos. Record yourself when you're practicing. Listen back and you'll instantly be able to tell, hey, that sounds great. Or, man, that wasn't quite what I thought it sounded like. Maybe I should spend a little bit more time working on that before I speed it up. But recording is an excellent habit to get into when you're working on these things on your own. Now, the next step with these doubles is we're going to start them in a little bit more challenging spot. With our first two examples, we had the double starting with our hi-hat. The more challenging way is to have it starting in between the hi-hat so that the first note of the double falls in between and the second note lines up with the next hi-hat. The first spot we're going to do that is actually at the very end of the bar. We're going to add a bass drum on the of 4, which would be the very last 16th, 4E and And then as we repeat, that's going to double back to beat 1, and it's going to be a double. So we're going to have a 1 when we come back to the top. This is a great pattern that a lot of drummers use on a ton of different recordings, and it's a great place to start with this because you get the feeling of landing right on beat 1, which feels like you're coming home. So let's try this at even a little bit slower tempo than we worked those first couple at. I'll give you this at 70 beats per minute first, and then I'll bump it back up to 100 so you can hear it at a little bit faster tempo. So here we go, 2 tempos, 70 and 100. All right, so now I've got a challenge for you. We're going to take these bass drum doubles and we're going to put them on the E of 1. Now what makes this extra hard is that our hi-hat is going to be playing all by itself on beat 1, and then we're going to follow that with the double starting in between the hi-hats. Now up to this point, every beat we've played has had a bass drum on 1. It feels really good to land on 1 with that bass drum, and we're really used to doing it. So when you take that bass drum off of beat 1, it can feel like you've got one leg up in the air and can really throw guys for a loop when they first start to play this. So again, take it slow to start off with. In addition to that, I'm also going to add one extra single bass drum in between the hi-hats on beat 3. We're going to put it on the of 3. So if we took the whole pattern, it would sound like this. 1 E and 2, 3, 4, 1 E and 2, 3, 4. Or if you'd rather, 1 bass, bass, snare, bass, bass, snare, 1 bass, bass, snare, bass, bass, snare. So let's do this at 2 tempos. We're going to do this at 70 beats per minute to start off with, and then we'll speed it up to 100 beats per minute after that. So 2 tempos, 70 and 100. Hope you enjoyed the lesson. Please like and subscribe to keep up on all the new lessons and reviews. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and leave a comment below letting us know of any new lessons or reviews you'd like to see in the future. Also, if you enjoyed the lesson, please consider donating to thedrumshed.com to help fund future lessons. Just click the donate button on the main page of our website, and thanks again for watching. We'll see you in the shed.